The entire courtyard goes silent the moment I walk up to the iron bar. 300 students. Every single one of them staring. Some laughing behind their hands, some already recording it on their mana lenses because they think they're about to watch me humiliate myself again. I grab the bar. I lift it like it's nothing, and the whole courtyard stops breathing. Because that bar has sat untouched in the training yard for 6 years. Instructors warned first years never to even try it. The strongest noble heir in the academy strained for 10 seconds last month and couldn't get it an inch off the ground. And I just picked it up like it was a broom handle. Nobody says a word. And that's exactly the problem, because in about 5 seconds, everyone is going to remember that I'm supposed to be the weakest student who has ever set foot in this academy. My name is Doyun Kang, and 3 months ago, I was ranked dead last out of every student who has ever taken the entrance trial at Virelia Knight Academy. Not just last in my year, last in the academy's 400-year history. My mana core reading came back at 0. Not low, 0. The examiners actually asked if I was some kind of clerical error. They call me 0 to my face now. Teachers use it like it's my real name. And for 3 months, I let them believe it, because the truth is so much stranger than anyone at this school could imagine, and telling it would get me killed. Here's what nobody knows. Every single night, long after curfew, I sneak down into the ruins beneath the old training hall, where my father hid a set of iron weights before he vanished 5 years ago. Weights wrapped in chains that hum like they're breathing. Weights that, according to the inscription carved into the base, no living hand shall lift, until the blood remembers. My blood remembers. Every night I lift them, and every night something inside me gets stronger. Not my mana. My mana stays exactly at 0, flat and dead like a corpse's heartbeat. But my body, my raw physical strength, climbs like it has no ceiling, and I have absolutely no idea why, or what it's going to cost me. 3 months ago, I thought I was hiding a weird family secret. Now I'm starting to think I might be carrying something that isn't supposed to exist anymore. Let me back up, because you need to understand exactly how impossible my situation actually is. Virelia Knight Academy only accepts students with a measurable mana core. That's the whole system. Every noble house, every merchant family, every farm kid with a lucky bloodline gets tested at age 12. If your core reads above the minimum threshold, you get a scholarship seat and a future. If it doesn't, you go home and live an ordinary life, and that's supposed to be that. I read 0. Dead 0. The kind of number that isn't supposed to physically exist in a human body. By every rule the examiners follow, I should have been sent home crying that day. Instead, my father showed up at the examination hall, argued with 3 senior instructors for 2 hours, and somehow got me a provisional seat under something called the legacy clause, an old rule that lets the child of a former academy knight enroll regardless of their reading. I didn't know my father used to be a knight. I didn't know he had a legacy claim buried in the academy's oldest records. I didn't know any of it, because 2 weeks after I started classes, he disappeared. No note, no body, no explanation. Just an empty house and a letter hidden inside my mattress that said one sentence: lift them every night, no matter what they call you. Before all of that, my father was just my father. A quiet man who ran a small forge on the edge of town, who never talked about his past, who flinched at loud noises he never explained, and kept every window in our house locked even in summer. I used to think that was just how he was. Looking back now, I think he was a man who spent every single day waiting for something to come find him, and hoping it never would. The one memory that keeps surfacing, over and over, since he vanished, is from when I was maybe 7 years old. He caught me trying to drag one of his old iron tools across the workshop floor, showing off for no one, and instead of laughing, he crouched down to my level with an expression I'd never seen on him before, somewhere between pride and pure terror. Strength like that isn't a gift, Doyun, he told me, voice low, like the walls themselves might be listening. It's a debt. Someday it might come looking to collect, and when it does, you make sure you're the one holding the leash, not the other way around. Then he ruffled my hair, laughed it off like a joke, and never mentioned it again. I didn't understand what he meant back then. I understand it perfectly now, standing at the edge of something ancient and starving, that apparently lives inside my own ribs, and I would give almost anything to ask him exactly how he knew. So I did, and that's when everything started changing. The first week, the weights didn't budge for me either. I'd go down to that freezing stone chamber every night, wrap my hands around cold iron colder than anything should be, and pull until my arms shook and my palms bled. Nothing, not a millimeter. I nearly gave up a dozen times. Then on the 9th night, something in my chest cracked open, like a seal breaking, and the weight came off the ground so easily I nearly fell backward in shock. I remember standing there in the dark, holding something that had apparently defeated every trained knight who'd ever tried it, and feeling absolutely nothing where my magic was supposed to be. That should have terrified me. It did terrify me, but it also felt like the first time in my life something actually worked in my favor. Meanwhile, at school, I was still zero. Still the punchline. Still the kid who got shoved into lockers by students 2 years younger than me, because everyone knew I couldn't fight back with magic, and apparently that meant I couldn't fight back at all. The only person who still sat with me at lunch was Milo Draven, a scrawny second year with a mana reading barely above minimum threshold and absolutely no filter between his brain and his mouth. You know they've got a betting pool going on. How long before you drop out, right? He told me one afternoon, cheerfully shoveling food into his mouth like the topic wasn't insulting. I put 2 silver on never. Nobody else bet that. I might actually lose money believing in you, which honestly feels unfair. Thanks for the vote of confidence, I said. I'm not doing it out of confidence. I'm doing it out of spite. I hate all of them. He gestured broadly at the noble tables across the hall with his fork. Also, you're the only friend I've got who doesn't ask me to do their alchemy homework. So really, this is self-interest. Milo was the only thing resembling normal in my entire life that year, and he had absolutely no idea how much that mattered, mostly because I never told him. He didn't know about the chamber under the training hall. He didn't know about the chains, or the voice, or the fact that my hands could apparently crush solidified mana like overripe fruit. He just knew that people threw insults at me in the hallway, and decided, for reasons I never fully understood, that he'd rather stand next to the target than pretend not to see it. That loyalty almost got him hurt more than once, because standing next to me made him a target too. The worst of them was Saren Veilric. If you want to understand Saren, picture the single strongest mana reading recorded at this academy in over a century, wrapped inside a boy who has been told his entire life that he was born to rule. House Veilric produces knight captains and battle mages the way farms produce wheat. Saren walked into his entrance trial and shattered the previous record by such a wide margin that instructors reportedly applauded. He has never lost a sparring match. He has never been humbled. And from day one, he decided I existed specifically to remind everyone what the bottom of the hierarchy looks like. Careful, Zero, he told me during our second week, flicking a spark of blue mana off his fingertip close enough to singe my sleeve. Wouldn't want you overexerting yourself. Might break something important. Like your ego. His friends laughed. I said nothing, because arguing with Saren Veilric as a 0 mana nobody was a great way to get expelled for disrupting class harmony, which is an actual rule they use specifically on scholarship students like me. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I only needed to survive here long enough to figure out what my father knew, what these weights actually were, and why lifting cursed iron every night was apparently more important to him than staying alive. I had no idea how fast that plan was about to fall apart. 2 weeks before everything changed, Saren's usual crowd cornered me and Milo outside the East Hall lockers. The kind of casual cruelty that never gets reported because instructors conveniently look the other way when the person doing it wears a noble crest. One of them shoved Milo hard enough to slam his shoulder into the metal doors, laughing about it before he'd even finished falling. Every instinct in my body screamed to grab the kid by his collar and show him exactly what 3 months of lifting cursed iron had done to my grip strength. I didn't. I couldn't. Not without questions I had no answers for yet. Instead, I stepped between them, hands open, voice flat. Leave him alone. Or what, Zero? The boy grinned, mana already sparking faintly around his knuckles. The universal warning sign for someone about to make an example out of you. You gonna hit me? With what? You've got nothing in there. Everyone's seen the reading. I let him shove me into the lockers instead. It hurt. My pride hurt worse. But it was safer than the alternative. And Milo dragging me away afterward, muttering about how one day he was going to personally set fire to every noble crest in this academy, was the only thing that made the walk back to our dorm bearable. That night in the chamber, gripping cold iron until my palms split open again, I promised myself that whatever this was growing inside me, I was going to learn to control it before it controlled me, because the next time someone put their hands on Milo, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop myself from answering properly. The first real crack came during combat theory, a class Saren treated like his personal stage. The instructor paired students for supervised sparring, low impact, first strike only, completely harmless in theory. Of course, I got paired with Saren. He didn't hold back like the rules required. The second the instructor turned to grab a training dummy, Saren fired a full-strength monobolt straight at my chest, fast enough that no first year should have been able to react to it at all. I don't remember deciding to move. My body just did it, some instinct buried under 3 months of lifting cursed iron in the dark, and I caught the bolt of solidified mana in my bare hand and crushed it like a snowball. The classroom went dead silent. Saren's face did something I had never seen it do before. It flinched. Lucky reflex, he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, but his voice had lost its usual bite. I could see it in his eyes. He was doing math that didn't add up, and he didn't like the answer. I should have played it off as luck too. Instead, my mouth, apparently operating independently from my brain that day, said, "Try again if you want. I don't think it'll go better for you." That was a mistake, a massive one, because Saren Vailric does not lose face in front of an audience, and now I had a target on my back that no amount of quiet living was going to erase. Word of the incident reached the administration faster than I expected. By the next morning, I'd been summoned to the dean's office, a cramped room lined with portraits of stern-faced former headmasters who all seemed to be judging me personally. Dean Alric Vesson steepled his fingers across his desk and studied me like I was a puzzle he resented having to solve. "Instructor Marin reports you deflected a full-strength offensive spell from Master Vailric's heir yesterday," he said. "With a 0 mana reading, care to explain how that's possible?" "I don't know, sir," I said, which had the enormous advantage of being technically true. "Adrenaline, maybe? People do strange things when they're scared." He didn't look remotely convinced, but the academy runs on politics as much as it runs on magic, and a formal investigation into a scholarship student's anomalous readings would require admitting the legacy clause my father invoked was more complicated than the official records suggested. Dean Vesson clearly didn't want that conversation any more than I did. "See that it doesn't happen again," he said instead, dismissing me with a wave, which is administrator language for we both know something strange is going on here, and neither of us is prepared to deal with it properly. I walked out of that office with my heart pounding, half expecting to be hauled back in at any moment, and it wasn't until I reached the courtyard that I let myself breathe again. That was the first time I understood just how much the people running this academy would rather look away from an inconvenient mystery than actually investigate one, and it was a lesson that would matter a lot more than I realized at the time. That night, I went down to the ruins, expecting the usual grinding, exhausting climb. Instead, I found the chains around the weights had shifted overnight, coiling into a different shape, revealing an inscription that hadn't been visible before. It read, "3 seals broken, 4 remain. The vessel wakes." I stood there staring at those words for a long time, iron dumbbells forgotten at my feet, and felt something ice-cold settle into my stomach. Vessel. That word doesn't belong in a sentence about a normal person. Vessels hold something. And whatever was inside me apparently had 3/7 of its cage already gone. I almost told someone, once, and it happened entirely by accident. I stayed too long in the chamber that night, careless with the hour, and walked straight into Instructor Ro Hesketh, in the corridor outside the old training hall, at nearly 2 in the morning. Hesketh taught combat history to bored upperclassmen and had a reputation for being the driest, most forgettable instructor on staff. The kind of man nobody bothered gossiping about because there was supposedly nothing interesting to say. His eyes went straight to my hands, then to the faint iron dust still clinging to my sleeves, and something in his expression changed completely, all the tired boredom draining out of it in an instant. "Where did you get those calluses?" he said. Not a question, a demand, quiet and controlled, like he already suspected the answer and was terrified of being right. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, which was possibly the least convincing lie I have ever told. He grabbed my wrist before I could pull away, turned my palm over under the corridor's dim mana lamp, and went very, very still. "Chain-forged calluses," he muttered, mostly to himself. "I haven't seen a pattern like this in 20 years. Not since the war." He looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, Instructor Hesketh looked afraid. "Whose weights are you lifting, boy?" "My father's," I said, before I could stop myself. Something shifted behind his eyes, recognition and dread arriving together. "Kang," he said slowly, like the name itself weighed something. "Your father was Doyun Kang." I had never heard anyone say my father's full name with that kind of reverence, and it knocked something loose in my chest. "You knew him?" "I served with him," Hesketh said, "before the campaign against the Ashbound Order went sideways, and he requested reassignment somewhere quiet. He released my wrist like it had burned him, and took a step back, studying me the way you'd study something that might explode. He told us he'd sealed it. He told the entire command he had sealed it somewhere. It could never wake again." A long pause. "He lied to all of us, didn't he? He brought it home." "Brought what home?" I said, even though some part of me already knew the shape of the answer and desperately didn't want it confirmed out loud. Hesketh didn't answer directly. Instead, he said something that has kept me awake more nights than the training itself. "Whatever you're becoming, Doyun, you cannot let the Academy Board find out before you understand it yourself. And you absolutely cannot let the Ashbound Order find out at all. Some of them never stopped looking for what your father took. If they ever suspected it survived, in any form," he shook his head, "train, stay quiet, and come find me the day it stops being something you can hide, because that day is coming faster than you think." He walked away without another word, leaving me standing alone in that corridor, with more questions than I'd had 5 minutes earlier, and considerably less sleep ahead of me. I didn't tell anyone else after that. Who was I supposed to tell? The examiners who called me a clerical error? The instructors who'd sooner expel me than investigate a scholarship student's family secrets? The one person who might actually understand had just told me to keep hiding, and something about the fear in his voice convinced me he was right. There was exactly one person at that academy who seemed to actually pay attention to things other than status, and her name was Iris Solon. Iris ranked in the top 10 of our year, an alchemy prodigy from a minor merchant house, quiet in a way that made people forget she was even in the room until she said something that made everyone reconsider their entire understanding of a subject. She sat 2 seats behind me in combat theory, and unlike literally everyone else, she never once called me zero. After the incident with Saren's mana bolt, she caught up with me in the hallway, books balanced against her hip, expression unreadable. "That wasn't a lucky reflex," she said, no preamble, like she'd been rehearsing it. "I've studied reaction speed formulas for 2 years. What you did wasn't luck. It was trained muscle memory, responding faster than conscious thought allows for someone with your reading." "Maybe I got lucky twice," I said. "Nobody gets lucky against a point-blank mana bolt from the strongest core in Academy history." She studied me for a long moment, and I braced for her to ask the obvious follow-up question. Instead, she said something that knocked the wind out of me. "Your hands. They're calloused in a pattern I've only ever seen in old combat manuals. Heavy resistance training. Extreme heavy resistance training. What are you lifting, Doyun?" I didn't answer her. I couldn't. But the way she looked at me after that wasn't mockery, and it wasn't pity either. It was curiosity, sharp and genuine. The first time anyone at that school had looked at me like I might actually be interesting instead of pathetic. That should have been a good moment. It didn't stay one for long. 2 days later, the Academy posted the quarterly ranking evaluations, and my name sat at the very bottom. Exactly where it always did, with a new red mark next to it that made my stomach drop through the floor. A formal notice. Students with sustained zero threshold readings after the 90-day mark would face mandatory reassessment. And reassessment at this academy has a nickname that everyone treats like a joke until it happens to them: the trial of ascension. Officially, it's a chance for underperforming students to prove their worth through a supervised combat trial instead of academic evaluation. Unofficially, it's a public execution of your dignity, staged in the main arena in front of the entire student body, designed to convince low rankers to quietly withdraw before it happens to them. Nobody survives the trial of ascension with their reputation intact. Nobody with a 0 reading has ever survived it at all. The last student assigned to it, 4 years ago, lost so badly that he transferred schools within the week. Before any of that could sink in properly, I made the mistake of telling Iris one piece of what Hesketh had said, just the name, nothing else. I regretted it within the hour, because Iris Solon does not hear a mysterious name and let it go. She hears a mysterious name and spends her entire evening in the Academy archive. She found me at breakfast the next morning with dark circles under her eyes and a stack of borrowed scrolls under one arm, practically vibrating with the specific energy of someone who has not slept because they found something too interesting to stop reading. "The Ashbound Order," she said, dropping into the seat across from me without asking. "Do you have any idea what that actually is?" "Apparently not as much as I should," I admitted. "It's a cult. Or it was. Officially disbanded after a war, 40 years ago, that most history classes gloss over in a single paragraph. They believed a handful of ancient titans, beings sealed away by the old kingdoms for nearly destroying the continent, could be woken and bound to human hosts to create what the old texts call vessel knights, soldiers with a titan's raw strength wearing a human face. She tapped the scroll in front of her. The war ended when the last known titan fragment was supposedly destroyed by a knight named Doyun Kang. I nearly choked on my food. That's my father's name. Iris looked at me for a long moment, and I watched every piece click into place behind her eyes at once. "He didn't destroy it," she said slowly. "He kept it, and if the Order ever finds out it survived, and that it's currently bonding to his son instead of gathering dust in some vault, they are not going to knock politely and ask for it back." "Great," I said. "Just great. So now on top of everything else, there's a cult of Titan worshippers who might want to carve me open." "I wouldn't phrase it quite that dramatically," she paused. "Though functionally, yes, that does appear to be the situation." We sat there in silence for a while, the noise of the dining hall suddenly feeling very far away, both of us quietly doing the math on exactly how much danger one 0-mana scholarship student had somehow managed to attract in under 4 months. I had 11 days. 11 days to figure out what these weights were actually doing to me, whether I could control it, and whether controlling it would even matter against whoever the academy decided to throw at me, because reassessment trials always match the lowest ranked student against someone specifically chosen to make the outcome humiliating and final. I already knew who that would be. Everyone did. Saren Vailric requested the match himself. The 11 days that followed were the strangest of my life. I trained twice as hard, spending every free hour I had down in that freezing stone chamber, watching my strength climb in ways that stopped making rational sense. By day 4, I was lifting weight that would have crushed a grown man's spine without effort. By day 7, the chains around the iron had shifted again, another seal cracking open, and this time I heard something. Not a sound exactly, more like a pressure behind my ears, a single word pushed directly into my skull, in a voice like grinding stone. Almost. I nearly dropped the weight and ran. I didn't, because underneath the fear was something else. Something my father's letter had planted in me without meaning to. Whatever this was, it had chosen me, or maybe it had been forced onto me, and either way, running from it wasn't an option anymore. Not with a trial of ascension bearing down on me, and a Vailric heir counting the days until he got to end my career in front of the entire school. On day 3, unable to shake the fear that I had no idea what I was actually capable of anymore, I snuck into the empty training yard after midnight. and tested myself against one of the reinforced practice dummies, the kind built to withstand direct hits from graduating knights without cracking. I hit it once, carefully, holding back as much as I possibly could. The dummy's iron core folded like wet paper, not dented, folded, clean in half, the reinforced frame groaning and collapsing in on itself before I'd even fully extended my arm. I stood there in the dark staring at the wreckage, breathing hard, and for the first time since the 9th night in the chamber, I felt something closer to fear than fascination. That dummy was rated to survive a direct hit from a 5th-year knight candidate at full output. I hadn't even tried. If that was what my body could do while holding back, I genuinely didn't want to imagine what would happen the day I stopped holding back on purpose, or the day something inside me decided to stop holding back for me. I dragged the wreckage into a supply closet before anyone could find it, told the groundskeeper the next morning that I had no idea what happened to the missing dummy, and spent the rest of that night lying awake doing math on exactly how much danger I might actually be to the people around me if I ever lost control in a crowded hallway instead of an empty arena. On day 4, after a training session that left both my palms bleeding through fresh bandages, I finally let myself ask the question I'd been avoiding since the night in the corridor with Hesketh. What happens to me when all 7 seals are gone? Does Doyun Kang still exist on the other side of that? Or does something older and far less human just borrow my face and walk around wearing it? I didn't have an answer, and the not knowing sat in my chest like a stone all through dinner, until Milo, oblivious to literally everything I was actually worried about, slid into the seat across from me and asked why I looked like someone had personally insulted my ancestors. Just tired, I said. You've been just tired for like a week straight, he said, unusually perceptive for someone who spent most of his free time trying to identify which dining hall dessert could theoretically be weaponized. Look, whatever's going on with you, and don't think I haven't noticed something is definitely going on, I'm not going to pry, but for what it's worth, you're still the same guy who used to split his lunch with me back when neither of us could afford seconds. Whatever's changing, that part hasn't. I didn't tell him how much I needed to hear exactly that sentence at exactly that moment. I just said thanks, and meant it more than he probably realized, and let the stone in my chest ease just slightly for the first time in days. Milo noticed something was wrong on day 5, mostly because I kept falling asleep during meals and flinching at shadows that moved slightly wrong. I never told him the real reason. I told him I was just stressed about the trial, which wasn't technically a lie, just an incomplete one. You know you don't actually have to win, right? He said, trying to sound reassuring and failing spectacularly. You just have to survive long enough that it's not, a total massacre. Lower everyone's expectations. Embrace the bit. Thanks, Milo. I'm serious. Nobody expects a 0 to beat the strongest core in a century. If you just last a full minute, people will probably be impressed. He hesitated, and something more genuine slipped through the joking tone. Whatever happens in there, though, I've got 2 silver riding on you not dropping out. Don't make me lose that bet. I need the silver. I didn't have the heart to tell him what actually happened when Saren's mana hit me during combat theory, or that the real risk in that arena wasn't losing. It was what might come pouring out of me if I won too hard. On day 7, walking back from the archive with Iris after another round of digging through old war records, I felt it again, the same prickling awareness of being watched that I'd felt once before without understanding why. This time, I actually saw him, a figure in a dark hooded cloak, standing motionless at the far end of the courtyard well past curfew, watching the training hall entrance with a patience that had nothing casual about it. Iris, I said quietly, don't look now, but do you see? By the time she turned, the courtyard was empty. Just wind moving through the dead leaves where someone had been standing a second earlier. You're sure it wasn't a groundskeeper? She said, though her voice had lost its usual confidence. Groundskeepers don't disappear into thin air, I said, and groundskeepers don't watch a training hall like they're waiting for something specific to walk out of it. Neither of us said the word ashbound out loud, but I could tell we were both thinking it, and after that night, Iris insisted on walking back to the dorms with me every evening, officially for research efficiency, unofficially because neither of us liked the idea of me crossing that courtyard alone anymore. Iris found me again on day 9. This time not in a hallway, but waiting outside the entrance to the old training hall itself, arms crossed, clearly having followed me at least once before I noticed. "I know you're going down there every night," she said flatly. "I know it has something to do with why you caught that bolt, and I know you're about to walk into a trial of ascension against Saren Vailric, with everyone expecting you to get carried out on a stretcher. You have a real talent for making my week worse," I said. "I have a talent for noticing things people want hidden." She held up a small vial of pale liquid. "This is a suppression tonic, alchemy grade. It temporarily masks unusual physical readings from the arena's monitoring wards during a trial. I'm not going to ask what you're hiding down there, but if it's the reason you're still standing after 3 months of people trying to break you, you're going to need this so the examiners don't disqualify you for anomalous enhancement before the match even starts." I stared at her. "Why help me?" She shrugged, but her eyes stayed sharp. "Because I've watched this academy chew up every low-ranked student who ever mattered, and I'm tired of pretending that's fair. Also," she added, almost as an afterthought, "I want to know what you actually are. Consider this a very expensive way of buying front-row seats to the answer." That was the first time since my father vanished that someone stood next to me on purpose instead of by accident, and it did something to my chest I wasn't prepared for. The night before the trial, I went down to the chamber one last time, and the inscription had changed again. 6 words carved fresh into stone that hadn't existed the day before. "The 6th seal breaks in blood." I understood immediately what that meant. Whatever happened tomorrow in that arena, it wasn't going to be a normal fight. Something inside me was going to break wide open, and I had no idea if I would still be myself on the other side of it. The morning of the trial of ascension, the arena filled faster than I had ever seen it. Every student, every instructor, even a handful of visiting nobles from partner houses, all crammed into the stands for the specific pleasure of watching Zero get erased. Saren walked out to the opposite end of the arena in ceremonial half-armor, mana already crackling faintly around his hands. Looking like he was bored by the entire concept of having to show up, his friends chanted his family name from the front row. Somewhere in the crowd, I spotted Iris, arms crossed tightly, not chanting anything, just watching me with an intensity that steadied something in my chest. Beside her, Milo had both hands cupped around his mouth, already shouting something encouraging and completely unhelpful about embracing the bit. And near the instructor's box, half hidden behind a support pillar where he probably thought no one would notice him watching, stood Hesketh, arms folded, face carved from stone. He caught my eye once, just briefly, and gave a single small nod that felt heavier than anything anyone else in that arena could have offered me. The presiding instructor read the rules in a voice that clearly expected this to be over in under a minute. First blood, submission, or unconsciousness ends the match. Standard reassessment protocols apply. Saren didn't wait for the horn. He never does. He launched a full offensive spell before the instructor finished the sentence. A compressed lance of blue mana screaming across the arena floor, fast enough to end most fights before they start. I caught it again. Bare hands, same as before, except this time I didn't just crush it. I redirected it, twisting my whole body and slamming the collapsing mana straight back into the ground beside him, hard enough to crack the arena floor and send him stumbling sideways. The stands went dead silent for the second time in 2 weeks. "That's impossible," someone whispered, loud enough to carry. "Zero readings can't redirect elemental force. There's nothing there to redirect it with." Saren's face twisted from shock into fury in about half a second, which is exactly the reaction I was hoping for, because furious opponents make mistakes, and I needed him to make a big one. He gave me exactly that. He abandoned his usual calculated style entirely and unleashed everything he had. A rapid chain of mana lances meant to overwhelm anyone through sheer volume rather than precision. Any normal zero-reading student would have been turned into a smear on the arena floor within seconds. The crowd surged to its feet, screaming, half of them convinced they were about to watch me die, and the other half convinced they were about to watch a miracle. Milo's voice cut through the chaos somewhere behind me, hoarse from shouting, still somehow finding the breath to yell at me not to lose his 2 silver. I didn't dodge. I walked straight through it. Every lance that connected shattered against my skin, like glass against stone, and with every impact, I felt something loosen further in my chest, chains grinding somewhere deep beneath my ribs. Another seal cracking wide open exactly like the inscription warned. By the time I reached him, standing close enough to see the disbelief crawling across his face, I could feel a pressure building behind my eyes that had nothing to do with exhaustion. "This isn't possible," Saren said, backing up a step, voice cracking for the first time since I'd known him. "You're a 0. You're supposed to be nothing." "Funny," I said, and my voice came out lower than I expected, edged with something that wasn't entirely mine. Nobody ever explained that to whatever's inside me. I hit him once. Open palm, controlled, nowhere near full force, because some instinct screamed at me that full force would kill him outright. Even controlled, the impact sent him flying the entire length of the arena and through the reinforced barrier wall meant to stop stray spells, which is a wall that has never once been breached by a student strike in the Academy's recorded history. The silence after that was the loudest thing I have ever experienced. And that's when the pressure behind my eyes exploded. Pain ripped through my chest like something was tearing its way out from the inside, and for one horrifying second I actually thought it was. My vision went white, then black, then filled with an image that wasn't a memory, because I have never seen it before in my life. A towering figure chained inside a mountain of black iron, eyes like dying stars, straining against bindings that groaned under the weight of centuries. A voice, the same grinding stone voice from the chamber, but louder now, closer, filled my skull completely. 6 seals broken. Vessel. 1 remains. Choose carefully what you do with what's left of me. I hit the arena floor on my hands and knees, gasping, and when I looked up, thin cracks of black light were spidering across my forearms like veins made of shattered glass, glowing faintly before fading back into normal skin. The examiners were already sprinting toward me, shouting things about anomalous readings and containment protocols. Iris was pushing through the crowd, face pale, mouthing something I couldn't hear over the noise. And somewhere near the arena's upper entrance, standing perfectly still while everyone else scrambled in chaos, I caught a glimpse of a figure in a dark hooded cloak that didn't belong to any academy uniform I recognized, watching me with an intensity that made every instinct I owned scream danger. The moment our eyes met, the figure smiled, like they'd just found something they'd been searching for a very long time, and vanished into the crowd before anyone else even noticed they were there. I passed the trial of ascension, officially. My reading remained at 0, but the rules only require winning the match, and I had just sent the strongest mana core in a century, flying through a wall that had never been broken before. By every technicality, I was no longer at risk of expulsion. Unofficially, I had just announced to an arena full of witnesses, several instructors, and apparently at least one hooded stranger with very specific interest in vessels and seals, that whatever I'm carrying inside me is real, it's waking up, and it only has 1 seal left before something changes forever. Saren Valeric is going to want revenge, and now he has the mana talent and the family resources to actually get it. The Academy is going to want answers about a 0-reading student who just shattered a 400-year record with his bare hands. And whoever that hooded figure was, they didn't look like someone who wanted to expose me to the authorities. They looked like someone who wanted to take me. Hesketh found me an hour later, after the examiners finally finished their scans, and reluctantly declared me stable enough to leave the infirmary wing. He shut the door behind him, checked the corridor twice, and sat down across from my cot, with the grim expression of a man about to deliver news he'd been dreading for years. 6 seals, he said quietly. You said 6 broke in there. That means your father's containment work held for exactly as long as it could, before your bloodline started undoing it from the inside, whether he wanted it to or not. He rubbed a hand over his face. 1 seal left, Doyun. When the 7th breaks, whatever your father spent his life keeping dormant stops being dormant. And I don't think it politely asks permission first. So what do I do? I asked. Just wait for it to happen? No, Hesketh said, and something in his voice sharpened into something closer to the soldier he must have been decades ago. You learn to master it before it masters you, and you do it fast, because that hooded figure you saw in the crowd wasn't imagination, and it definitely wasn't a curious student. The Ashbound Order kept records too, boy. If even one of their old hunters recognized what just happened in that arena, they will not wait around to confirm their suspicions politely. They will come for you directly, and they will not particularly care who else gets hurt clearing the way. Iris came to see me right after Hesketh left, slipping past the infirmary attendant with the sort of casual confidence that suggested she'd bribed someone or forged a pass, possibly both. She sat on the edge of the cot, studied the faint fading lines still visible on my forearms, and didn't say anything for a long moment. I looked up the Ashbound sigil while you were unconscious, she finally said, just to be thorough. There's a symbol they used, a broken circle wrapped in 7 links. I checked the old war archive illustrations against what witnesses described seeing on your arms during the match. She met my eyes. They match, Doyun. Exactly. So it's real, I said. The cult, the vessel, all of it. Not just Hesketh being paranoid. It's real. She hesitated, and for the first time since I'd known her, something like fear slipped through her usually unshakable composure. And if they're already watching you closely enough to send someone to observe the trial in person, they've likely been tracking rumors about your father's disappearance for years, just waiting for a sign that whatever he was protecting had started to wake up. She squeezed my hand once, quick and almost involuntary, then let go like she'd surprised even herself. Whatever happens next, you're not facing it alone. I didn't spend 2 weeks digging through cursed war archives just to walk away now. That should have made me feel better. Mostly it did, but underneath the relief was something colder. The growing certainty that whatever was coming for me next wasn't going to care how many people stood beside me when it arrived. I thought surviving the trial of ascension would be the hardest part of my year. Standing in that cracked arena, feeling the last seal humming under my ribs like a countdown clock I never agreed to start, I finally understood something my father must have known the entire time he was disappearing piece by piece from my life. This was never about proving I belonged at this academy. Every seal that breaks takes me further from the version of myself that used to be laughed at for having nothing at all, and closer to something my own father spent his life running from, without ever telling me why. I keep replaying his voice in my head, that quiet warning from a workshop years ago, about debts that come looking to collect, and I finally understand that he wasn't talking about strength as a blessing. He was talking about strength as a countdown, ticking toward a moment he never lived long enough to prepare me for. Saren Vailric is going to spend every waking hour rebuilding his pride into a weapon aimed directly at me. The Academy Board is going to start asking questions that a dismissive wave from the Dean can't hold off forever. And somewhere out there, a cult that supposedly disbanded 40 years ago just watched their missing vessel wake up in a school arena, in front of witnesses, wearing my face. One seal left. One chain between whatever I am now and whatever I'm about to become. And the only thing I know for certain, standing in the wreckage of a record that had stood untouched for 400 years, is that the moment it finally breaks, nothing about my life, or this academy, is going to stay quiet ever again.